the wedding venue. Karen still hadn't arrived, but just a few minutes earlier, she had sent me a WeChat message saying she was on her way. Friends and relatives seated below the stage were already starting to grow impatient. I had no choice but to mirror my phone screen onto the large display and joke. Everyone, look, Karen's late because something went wrong with her wedding dress. This one's not on me. And right at that moment, Karen sent over a video. I was momentarily stunned and immediately opened it. What appeared on the screen was an obscene, unbearable scene. Karen, am I better than Kevin? Martin, you're way better than him. Calmly, I turned on screen recording and gestured for the audience to stay quiet. Something this exciting, of course, had to be shared with everyone. Chapter 1. In the video, Karen was wearing a revealing nightgown, stockings clenched between her teeth, seductive and wild. The man going at it with her was Martin, her childhood sweetheart, the one she'd grown up with. A few seconds later, the crowd below erupted into chaos. Most people pulled out their phones and started filming the screen. I had anticipated this, so I had already stepped aside. But Karen Sue's family reacted immediately. Some rushed to find the projector switch, while Mr. and Mrs. Sue ran straight toward me. Kevin, shut off your phone right now. Mr. Sue shouted at me. I smiled and asked, Uncle, does turning it off even matter now? What should be seen and what shouldn't? Hasn't it all already been seen? You did this on purpose. Mr. Sue gritted his teeth. I shook my head. Uncle, I care about my reputation too. If this could have been covered up, I wouldn't be stupid enough to expose it publicly. But the problem is, your good daughter sent the video herself. I answered the call, and everyone saw it. Everyone now knows I was cheated on. Since my dignity is already gone, the only thing left is to make it clear that I'm the victim. Then, as the victim, I can step out and do crisis management to minimize the damage. Ah. Mr. Sue slapped his thigh, his face turning ashen with anger. I took out some fast-acting heart medicine and handed it to him. All right, Uncle, what's done is done. Getting angry won't change anything. Let's focus on damage control as soon as possible. Mr. Sue let out a long sigh and, in the end, could only nod. He was my father-in-law-to-be, but I was also his special assistant. The methods he used to keep me by his side weren't exactly honorable. Still, no matter what, he paid me the highest salary in the industry and made sure my family lived well. So even if I had my emotions, I remained grateful. Even when he asked me to marry his daughter Karen, despite me knowing she had just had an abortion, I still agreed to try dating her. That's how people are, especially men who've crawled out of the depths of the mountains. Covered in blood, you learn to compromise, and you learn gratitude. Mrs. Sue looked at me with pleading eyes, already full of tears. She grabbed my hand and said, Kevin, you're a good child. You've suffered. Auntie, go home for now. Try not to show your faces publicly. Gossip will be brutal. I waved over the bodyguards. Not long after, Mr. and Mrs. Sue were escorted away. Chapter 2. I turned off my phone and walked back onto the stage, addressing the friends and relatives below. Everyone, today's farce is over. The Sue group will issue an official statement very soon. This Kevin really has a servant's fate. He's been cheated on this badly by Karen, and he's still thinking about the Sue group. Ale, go give Kevin my personal business card. Tell him I want him as a general manager. You old fox, you're dreaming. When I tried to poach Kevin back then, I offered him $10 million a year. He didn't even blink. This kid is destined for big things. Being able to stay this calm under circumstances like this, that's exactly why. Even though old Sue's health is falling apart, the Sue group is still thriving through its internet business. The discussion about me from the audience wasn't quiet at all, but I was already used to it. Even before I graduated, I had been classified by top headhunting firms as elite talent. Members of the Sue family also came up to the stage one after another, offering words of comfort. No one mocked me, because everyone knew that for all these years, the Sue group had remained a dominant internet powerhouse in City C, and they received generous dividends every year, because I was the one controlling the overall strategy. So more than anyone else, they were afraid I might leave the Sue group. I thought I wouldn't feel too upset, because I had long known that Karen Sue's heart wasn't with me. But after being together for so many years, suddenly running into something like this still left me feeling inevitably dejected. I went home, collapsed onto the sofa, and my mind went blank. Just then, my phone rang. It was Karen. Kevin, what the hell do you mean? Why did you project the video onto the big screen? You ruined me. Karen roared. I replied calmly, because you were late, and the guests were already losing patience. I could only show them your chat history to give them an explanation. Otherwise, the scene would have been impossible to manage. I didn't know you'd send a video, let alone that you'd share your bedroom antics with me. I didn't do it on purpose. I hid it by accident. Karen's tone was still full of anger. And don't be so sarcastic. I was just having a final goodbye with Martin. After today, I'm still your wife. I know. I responded flatly. Why do I feel like you're not angry? Karen suddenly asked, sounding a little nervous. I replied indifferently. You're the one who's wrong. Why should I be angry? Good that you're not angry. If you start causing trouble, I'll have my dad fire you. Karen snorted coldly. Fire me? I almost laughed out loud and hung up the phone without another word. Then I instructed the housekeeper to remove all the wedding decorations from the villa. They were an eyesore. Chapter 3. I returned to the study, brewed a pot of tea, and got back to work. But less than half an hour later, Karen came back. She was still wearing her pure white wedding dress. Her delicate face was flushed, and her neck was covered in kiss marks. Behind her stood Martin, dressed like a groom, looking at me with a provocative gaze. Please wait a moment. I still have some work to finish, I said with a polite yet distant smile. Karen frowned, staring at me intently, as if trying to find something on my face. Suddenly, she exploded. Kevin, I cheated on you. Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you jealous? I looked up at her in surprise. Karen, I already said it on the phone. You're the one at fault, and the consequences will be yours to bear. So there's no need for me to be angry or jealous. Karen seemed to be completely confused by my logic. She tilted her head and froze for a moment before saying, Did you ever actually love me? If you loved me, how could you not be angry or jealous? I shook my head. I've been angry, I've been jealous, but didn't you still do whatever you wanted? In that case, why should I keep wasting my effort? It's like writing code. If you already know a program won't run, you don't keep writing it that way. Am I code? Kevin, I'm a human being. Karen screamed in breakdown. I shook my head again. You're the one who cheated, and now you're the one feeling wronged. That's not reasonable. Then let's get a divorce. Karen suddenly said. Before the wedding, we had already registered our marriage. I nodded. We can divorce, but it has to be done according to the prenuptial agreement. Martin looked as if he had finally heard what he wanted to hear and said excitedly, Karen, don't hesitate. Divorce him. However, Karen shot Martin a vicious glare. Then she looked at me again, disbelief in her eyes. Kevin, did you ever truly love me? We were together for many years. Of course I loved you, I said calmly, but that doesn't matter anymore because I don't love you now. I shook my head. So you're certain the divorce must follow the prenuptial agreement? Karen asked again. I nodded. Yes, the party at fault in the marriage leaves with nothing, including all assets related to the Sue Group. Fine, then we divorce. Karen gritted her teeth and stared at me. Martin, however, turned pale. Karen, this won't work. Isn't he clearly setting you up? Martin, you need to understand one thing, I said calmly. You and Karen got together willingly. No one forced either of you. So this has nothing to do with me setting you up. When we signed the prenuptial agreement, I confirmed every clause with Karen repeatedly. She knew exactly what she was agreeing to. Martin's lips twitched. So you're saying that if Karen divorces you, she gets nothing at all? Yes, I nodded. Martin hurriedly asked, what about Uncle and Auntie's shares? Their shares became joint marital property between Karen and me. According to the prenuptial agreement, they now all belong to me. I stood up and looked at Karen. Karen, if we divorce, it will have some impact on the Sue Group, so I don't recommend divorce. I'm saying this for the sake of the Sue Group. I hope you can understand. Martin immediately tried to persuade her. Yeah, Karen, you really shouldn't get a divorce. Karen stared at Martin coldly. Didn't you keep saying you wanted to marry me? Why are you against the divorce now? Is it because once I divorce, I'll be broke? Martin's face went completely bloodless. I glanced at Karen. At least you're not that stupid. Many people think that when love breaks down, divorce is inevitable. In fact, it should be. A woman's dignity and a man's dignity are both trampled by infidelity. So divorce really is the most correct choice. But for a corporation, whether the family holding the largest share is stable is also a key concern for investors. That's why Karen and I not divorcing is actually the best option. I even needed to do a full platform live stream, cementing the image that I was the victim, yet willing to forgive my cheating wife for the sake of love. Plenty of people would definitely call me a simp, but what investors would see instead was this, that I was willing to sacrifice everything for the Sue Group, even my dignity, to protect it, and that meant the Sue Group was unshakable. Chapter 4. In fact, that was exactly what I did. After public opinion fully fermented, I started a full platform live stream. During the stream, I cried for a long time, choking up as I recounted how Karen and I had met, fallen in love, and grown together. Of course, those touching, heart-wrenching little stories were written by someone else. I just memorized them. Then I stated that as long as Karen was willing to turn back, I would continue to fulfill my responsibilities as a husband. After that, Karen cried bitterly on camera, saying she deeply regretted everything. She insisted that nothing had happened between her and Martin, and that she had been drugged and wasn't in her right mind. Online comments naturally became one-sided. No one sympathizes with a simp victim. Some even feel that the two people who cheated aren't all that hateful. What followed was a wave of relentless abuse directed at me. I didn't care, because this was all part of my own plan. Only this way could the Sue Group's interests be fully protected. When I returned to the villa, Mr. and Mrs. Sue were there. Besides them, there was also a cold, aloof woman dressed in a black professional skirt suit. Her long hair was tied up meticulously. She wore silver-rimmed glasses, and the tailored suit made her look sharp, capable, and subtly seductive. Amelia. I was surprised. Back then, in order to keep me at the Sue group, Mr. Sue had arranged for someone to drug both Amelia and me at a banquet, then had employees secretly record everything. If I insisted on leaving, the footage would be leaked. Society is still biased in favor of men. For me, such a video would only add to some scandalous gossip, but for Amelia, it would be a lifelong stain. Her entire life would be ruined. So I chose to stay at the Sue group, and a few days later, Amelia was sent to the European branch. Once she left, 5 years passed. In those 5 years, we never saw each other again, nor did we ever stay in contact. After all, once Amelia left, Mr. Sue devoted himself to pairing me with Karen. The Sue family had no sons, and only one daughter, Karen. Knowing my abilities, Mr. Sue had long treated me as a live-in son-in-law in his strategic calculations. Long time no see. Amelia replied coldly. I nodded. I knew she would harbor resentment toward me, so I said nothing more. Uncle, Auntie, the Sue group's losses have already been minimized, I said, sitting on the sofa. I believe this more than repays the support you once gave me, so please let me leave the Sue group. At that moment, I noticed Amelia tense up. When she looked at me, there was even a hint of pleading in her eyes. She was afraid that if I left, those videos would be released. Before Mr. Sue could respond, Karen came downstairs, and Martin was with her. Their clothes were disheveled. You could even see sweat still on them. Even an idiot could tell what they had just been doing. I sighed, utterly baffled as to why she always liked to do stupid things in public. Kevin, listen carefully. I do not agree to a divorce, Karen said coldly. If you insist on leaving, I'll expose everything myself, admit that I cheated first during the marriage and caused the Sue group's market value to evaporate. She stared at me fiercely. I want you to watch as I live under the same roof with Martin every day. I'll even cheat right in front of you, just to humiliate you. I felt that this woman's mental state was seriously unstable. Still, her words made me uncomfortable, because she truly didn't see me as a human being at all. But that was also understandable. After all, I was the one who had sacrificed his dignity to minimize the Sue group's losses. Chapter 5. To Karen, it looked as if I was willing to do absolutely anything for the Sue group. The problem was, she had never truly understood me. I glanced at her and said calmly, Karen, you've misunderstood something. I protected the Sue group to repay a debt of gratitude, but that repayment only happens once, not endlessly. Then I looked at Mr. and Mrs. Sue. Uncle, Auntie, since things have come to this, I'll be honest. If Karen keeps causing trouble and anything happens, I will not step in again to clean it up. Mrs. Sue lowered her head and began to cry. She had always treated me like her own son. Back when I was framed, she had been the strongest voice opposing it. Mr. Sue clutched his chest, his whole body trembling. In the end, he still said, Kevin, you've done more than enough for the Sue family. I won't stop you anymore. Go. I shook my head. Uncle, you know what I want. Mr. Sue looked at Amelia and said, there was actually no video at all. And that night, you and Aim didn't do anything either. Even the soreness she felt the next day was just from a female attendant stretching her muscles. I froze for a moment, then immediately understood Mr. Sue's intention. He continued, that was just a test for you. If you had walked away without considering Aim's reputation, nothing bad would have happened to her. I would have told her the truth. But your character would have been questionable to me. You didn't do that, which proved you were worth trusting. I let out a sigh, unable to say anything. Mr. Sue turned to Amelia. I'm sorry, Aim. Even though you weren't actually harmed, I never told you the truth back then. That must have left you with psychological scars. That's my fault. It doesn't matter anymore. Amelia replied coldly. I've already gained enough. Hearing that, I finally felt relieved. I stood up. Then I'll be on my way. You're not allowed to leave. Karen suddenly rushed over, grabbing my shirt. If you dare walk out, I'll destroy the Sue group. The Sue group belongs to your family, not me, I said, shaking her hand off. I've already repaid my debt, so you can't use the Sue group to threaten me anymore. That said, I suggest you and Martin keep things low-key. Once this storm passes, I'll divorce you. When Martin heard that, he suddenly ran over. Karen, just let him go. The excitement in his eyes was impossible to hide. In his mind, once the storm passed and the divorce happened, Karen would inherit the Sue family, and whatever Karen had, he would have too. I glanced at him indifferently. Martin, do you know who drafted that prenuptial agreement? What do you mean? Martin froze. I smiled. Uncle drafted it himself. He and Auntie knew Karen wasn't very sharp, and they were afraid the Sue family's assets would fall into the hands of someone with ulterior motives. That's why the clause about the cheating party leaving with nothing exists. Martin's face turned pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. You're probably dying to ask, if Karen and I divorce normally, what happens to the Sue family's assets, right? I can tell you now, even in a normal divorce, the Sue family's assets would still be under my name. All I'd need to do is give Karen a monthly allowance to cover basic living needs. And by basic living, I mean not starving to death. As for anyone trying to spend her money, I can reclaim it at any time. If you can't pay it back, you go to prison. I smiled faintly. A real elite family would never truly allow someone to wipe out the family line and seize everything. Martin shouted at Mr. Sue. And you're not afraid Kevin will take the money and run? There are only 3 people I care about in this life. Mr. Sue said calmly, my wife, my daughter, and Kevin. If my daughter can't handle this wealth, then it belongs to Kevin. There was no shouting, no confrontation. It felt just like business negotiations at a table, Martin said in confusion. But if that's the case, Karen won't be able to live well. What you really mean is that you won't gain anything from it, right? Mr. Sue interrupted coldly. Martin, let me tell you something. For families like ours, we'd rather burn all that money than let someone like you spend a single cent of it. As for Kevin, if he wants money, all he has to do is lift a finger, and people will offer him tens of millions in salary plus shares, and he doesn't even care about money. Martin looked utterly lost. I don't believe it. I don't believe there are people who don't care about money. I shook my head. Martin, what's your goal? Enjoying wealth and luxury without putting in any effort, right? I was the same when I was poor, but after gaining more knowledge, I realized money isn't that important. My goal is to do something meaningful for this country, like making breakthroughs in AI technology and leaving my name in history. Martin opened his mouth, but no words came out. We're on completely different levels, different heights, different perspectives. You wouldn't understand. I turned and walked away, but Karen rushed in front of me, blocking my path, refusing to let me leave. Suddenly, she reached up and rubbed the kiss marks on her neck. Kevin, they're fake. All of it is fake. I had the makeup artist paint them on just to provoke you. Even the video was pre-made AI footage. It wasn't me at all. Chapter 6. This time, I was the one left stunned. I took out my phone and imported the saved video into professional software. Then I confirmed it was AI-generated footage. I even traced the original source video. It featured a blonde, blue-eyed woman. Mr. and Mrs. Sue rushed over as if they had seen hope. Mr. Sue even pulled me back to sit on the sofa. Kevin, if all of this is fake, can you and Karen maybe talk things through again? Mr. Sue asked, his voice full of pleading. He didn't care about the money. He was even furious at his foolish daughter. But what kind of father doesn't want his child to be well? So I knew very clearly, he still wanted me as his son-in-law. I looked at Karen, completely speechless. What on earth are you doing? To be honest, when I first saw that video of her and Martin, I was hurt. But that kind of pain was something I could put down quickly, because I've always believed that anything requiring me to humble myself and beg to keep isn't worth keeping. So from beginning to end, I never lost control of my emotions. I handled everything calmly. But Karen using AI footage to deceive me, using our own AI technology, actually made me angry. What angered me wasn't jealousy. It was that I genuinely couldn't understand why she would act so recklessly. What am I doing? Kevin, I just wanted to know, did you ever truly love me? Do you know why the Sue Group funded you in the first place? Because I had a crush on you. You were so brilliant in the computer science world, and I was useless. Good at nothing. I didn't dare confess. I just thought, if I could help you live well, maybe that would make me happy too. Later, when you joined the Sue Group to repay the favor, do you know I didn't sleep the entire night from excitement? I got to see you every day. Even my parents were pushing us together, but you were always so distant. Do you know how inferior that made me feel? Yet even with that inferiority, I still liked you more and more. I wanted you desperately, but I was afraid you didn't love me. So I planned everything between you and Amelia. I made it so you couldn't leave the Sue Group. And at the time, I thought, once you'd been with another woman, once you weren't a virgin anymore, you'd be one step lower than me. But during that period, you kept going to see Amelia. Even after she left, you still looked for her. Do you know how jealous and miserable that made me? Later, even when you agreed to date me because of my parents, I was still scared. So I tested you. I told you I'd just broken up, that I'd had an abortion. I even forged medical records to fool my parents. But all these years, you never once asked about any of it. That just proved you didn't care about me at all. Even on the day we registered our marriage, I couldn't see a smile on your face. I even felt like you were thinking about Amelia. That's why everything after happened. I deliberately brought Martin home. I brought him back again today. I just wanted to see you angry, to see you jealous, but you weren't. By the end, Karen had collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood there, completely frozen, unable to say a single word. Kevin, are you actually stupid, or just pretending to be? If I really had had a boyfriend, then after we got together, would I have cried from the pain? And you, Karen continued, after that first time, you barely touched me. Every time, I was the one initiating, and you always seemed uninterested. I said helplessly. No, back then you said it hurt. So I thought it was because of the abortion. Later I didn't touch you because I was afraid your body couldn't handle it. After that, the Sue group was in the middle of a major transition. I was constantly sleep deprived. To be honest, of course I cared whether Karen had really had an abortion. Very few men wouldn't. But once I made a commitment, I was the kind of person who would give everything wholeheartedly. So I truly hadn't held it against her. What I never expected was that Karen had been testing me since that early on. Look, I'm a hardcore STEM guy, I said weakly. If you test me like that, you're never going to get the answer you want. You should have just asked me directly. I've always been the type, if you ask me sincerely, I'll give you an honest answer. I felt like everything had completely spiraled out of control. Chapter 7. As Karen kept crying, her expression suddenly turned vicious as she stared at Martin. It was always him giving me ideas. We grew up together, so I never thought he would hurt me. Martin's face had gone completely bloodless. His whole body was trembling, because he knew exactly what kind of outcome his actions would lead to. Sue's mother, who was always gentle, finally spoke. I don't want to see him again, ever. Four bodyguards stepped forward and restrained Martin. He immediately shouted in panic. Karen, you can't just abandon me. I love you more than anyone. But I already told you long ago that I only love Kevin. I rejected you clearly. Karen snapped back. And do you really love me? You just want my family's money. She turned to the bodyguards. Take him away. Amid his screams, Martin was dragged out. The atmosphere in the room became even more awkward. Amelia stood up and said coolly, President Sue, there's nothing more for me to do here, right? Well. Sue's father hesitated, clearly at a loss for words. Sue's mother gave an embarrassed smile. Kevin, your uncle and I feel that we owe you far too much, and we thought you and Aim were a good match. So we brought her back, hoping to set you two up. But now, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Uncle, Auntie, I appreciate the goodwill, but I still have to say, your way of handling things is a bit extreme. You don't consider other people's feelings nearly enough. But what could I do? In someone like Mr. Sue's world, ordinary people were pieces on a chessboard, meant to be used. From different standpoints, ways of doing things were bound to be completely different. Even now, both Amelia and I, when handling matters, sometimes treated people as pieces in a game. I stood up and looked at Amelia. I'm sorry. Once again, I dragged you into this because of me. None of us had a choice. I understand. Amelia replied, nodding as she turned to leave. I followed after her, leaving together with her, and at the same time said to Karen, have you ever thought about this? The moment you let Martin provoke you into testing me, it already meant you didn't trust me. Doesn't that also mean Martin held a very important place in your heart? Karen, this is the end for us. There was no explosive argument, no messy online exposés, no clinging or refusal to let go. Everything just ended like that, one of the ways elite families resolve problems. I didn't drive, because the car belonged to the Sue family, so I shamelessly hitched a ride in Amelia's car. She drove with a cold expression. I sat quietly in the back seat, silent, like two people with nothing to do with each other. Why do I suddenly feel like you're the boss and I'm the driver? Amelia said out of nowhere. If I had been sitting in the front passenger seat, maybe it wouldn't have felt that way. But what couples call the exclusive seat has always felt unsafe to me. I'd long since gotten used to sitting in the back. I didn't know what to say. I replied quietly. I was afraid it'd be awkward. Chapter 8. I let out an awkward chuckle. Amelia glanced at me and said, then why did you insist on riding in my car? I don't believe that if you drove off in one of the Sue family's cars, they'd actually stop you. All right, I'll be honest, I said. I've always felt like I owed you. I wanted to say something, but I was afraid you wouldn't want my apology, or my comfort, so I never managed to say it out loud. Just then, Amelia pulled the car over by the roadside. Nearby was a street stall selling spicy skewers and stir-fried seafood. Hungry? She asked suddenly. I nodded. I really was hungry. So we went to the stall, and she seriously ordered a bunch of food. I wasn't very familiar with street stalls when I was poor. I didn't have the money to eat there, so I didn't even dare look. Later, when I had money, I no longer had the time to make up for that regret. Spicy, intense, but really delicious. I drank some cold beer. It was especially refreshing and instantly lifted my mood. That night, I actually had some awareness. Amelia said casually, maybe we really didn't do anything, but I remember you kissing me, and your hands weren't very well behaved. You even hurt me a bit. She pointed at her chest. My face flushed. Sorry, I wasn't fully conscious back then. I really don't remember exactly what I did, but I do remember having a very vivid dream. No need to apologize. Amelia shook her head. I already said, We were both forced by circumstances. I don't even hate the Sue family, let alone you. Why don't you hate the Sue family? I asked. Amelia tilted her head and thought for a moment before replying. Other than scheming against me, the Sue family actually treated me very well. Like you, I was funded by them. They were benefactors to me too. After I went abroad, they treated my family extremely well. They were also afraid something might happen to me overseas. For 5 years, there were always 8 bodyguards with me. They gave me a lot of authority and space to really show what I could do. I honestly don't have a reason to hate them. I don't like how they treat people as chess pieces, I said with a bitter smile. But I can't bring myself to hate them either. And at least they don't play dirty in an ugly way. Amelia nodded in agreement, then asked, "You looked for me back then. Why?" "To apologize," I answered honestly. And I also thought, since it had already happened, maybe we could try dating. After all, back then, pretty much every single man in the Sue group saw you as a goddess. I was no exception. I've returned to the country now. Most likely, after you officially take over, I'll step away from the Sue group. What I mean is, we could give it a try. Amelia blinked at me, then lowered her voice and said, "I've been single since birth. I'm almost 30 now, and lately I keep breaking out. A traditional doctor said it's easy to cure, just need to find a boyfriend." I froze, completely at a loss. "Still thinking about Karen?" Amelia asked. Her tone was neutral, like a normal question. I shook my head. "Karen and I will probably maintain the marriage for a while, and I just ended a relationship. There's inevitably some lingering melancholy. That's about it. Then let's just start as friends," Amelia said, smiling as she picked up a napkin and leaned over to gently wipe the corner of my mouth. A few days later, I handed over my work to Amelia and officially left the Sue group. That very day, I joined an internet technology company. Just as Mr. Sue had said, I was offered a salary in the tens of millions per year. The company also transferred property and a car to my name, along with the highest shareholding below the chairman. In life, it's always good to have a skill to rely on. If it's cutting edge, you can live like I do. Even an ordinary skill can still put food on the table and clothes on your back. Karen, on the other hand, stopped causing trouble. At first, I thought it was just a minor illness, but half a month later, Mrs. Sue called me in tears. She said Karen had cancer and didn't have much time left, and Karen had refused chemotherapy. She loved beauty too much. Of course she wouldn't choose chemo. Chapter 9. I took leave from work and returned to the villa where Karen and I once lived. The garden in the front yard was full of her favorite flowers. She used to take care of them herself. Near the villa was a doghouse. The golden retriever, seeing me again, still stuck out its tongue and wagged its tail, trotting over to rub against me. Everything felt just as familiar, and yet just as foreign. I entered the villa and saw Karen sitting on the sofa watching TV, crying as she watched. It seemed to be an old Korean drama, the kind full of mindless, emotionally torturous plot lines. When she saw me, she was startled. She hurriedly wiped away her tears and fixed her hair. I turned off the TV and tidied up the messy coffee table in front of her. "Kevin, why are you here? Aren't you with Amelia?" Karen asked nervously. "I'm very busy, and Amelia is busy too," I said with a smile. "So even if we do have feelings for each other, we don't really have time to date. We barely even have time to message each other." After a pause, I added, "My mom told me about your condition, so I came to keep you company. I know you love beauty. You definitely wouldn't accept chemotherapy, so I came to walk this last stretch with you." The smile Karen had forced onto her face collapsed, and tears streamed down. "Don't cry. Everyone reaches this day eventually," I said as I sat beside her, just like before, pulling her into my arms. "You're just leaving earlier than I am. Go put on some makeup and change clothes. Let's go out." "Where are we going?" Karen asked, her face full of anticipation. "Anywhere you like. Wherever you want to go, we'll go." It suddenly occurred to me that Karen was actually very easy to comfort. Once, when I attended a banquet, a woman had clung to me. She stumbled into my arms and kissed my shirt, leaving a lipstick mark. Karen saw it when I got home and made a huge scene. But after I explained everything and coaxed her, she made only one request, that I spend a whole day with her at Disneyland. I agreed, but we only stayed for half a day before I was called back to the company. She was disappointed, yet she still came back with me. I worked while she scrolled on her phone, angrily flaming her teammates in a game. If I were a woman, already a bit insecure, and paired with an emotionally clueless STEM guy like me, I'd probably feel unsafe too. All of a sudden, I realized that even though Karen had believed Martin's words, caused countless misunderstandings, and even humiliated me in public, I no longer cared. After all, she hadn't betrayed me. Instead, I was the one who often thought of Amelia. Maybe the one truly at fault was me. Over the next half year, Karen and I traveled to many places. She often fell ill in the middle of a trip, but she insisted on not being hospitalized, relying instead on targeted drugs to hold on. Even when her body could barely take it anymore, she would still cling to me every night, again and again. Later, at the Mogeo Caves, she passed away. I searched for her for a long time but couldn't find her. In the end, I could only squat by the roadside and cry. She sent me a message. An old dog leaves its owner when it senses death approaching. I will leave the one I love when I am about to die. There was also a photo. It was her back, sitting beneath the sunset. Her arms were spread wide, as if she were about to fly. After returning to City C, I met with Mr. and Mrs. Sue and promised to take care of them for the rest of their lives. And Amelia and I did not continue our relationship. She said that when she first came back, Karen wasn't in my eyes at all, but now Karen filled both my eyes and my heart. She didn't need to say it. I already knew. And only then did I truly understand. Feelings require companionship. They aren't code. You don't just finish writing them and move on. Chapter 10. In a daze. Another half year had already passed. That night, after feeding the dog, I went back inside to work. Later, the wind picked up. Worried it might rain, I went out to bring the dog indoors, but the dog was gone. I suddenly remembered what Karen had once said. An old dog leaves its owner when it senses death approaching. So, was the golden retriever dying too? My heart ached. If even the dog died, then there would really be very little left that Karen had given me. So I went out into the wind, searching everywhere. Then, under a tree, I saw a woman in a black hoodie squatting there, holding the golden retriever in her arms. I walked over, grabbed her, and yanked her upright. Fury written all over my face. You're fucking dead, aren't you? Karen cried out in shock. Only later did I find out, she had been pretending all along, and the one who had plotted against me was Sue's mother, the woman who had always treated me like her own son. She was the one who lied to me, saying Karen had cancer. And so, I went to see Karen. During that time, I gave everything to love her, to accompany her, and I sank completely into it. I carried her back into the house and threw her onto the sofa. Where the hell have you been these past 6 months? I demanded. I didn't go mess around. Karen said softly, lowering her head, looking pitiful. I've been at home the whole time. Why did you lie to me? I questioned her harshly. You could see how much pain I was in these past 6 months, couldn't you? Karen muttered. I was afraid that if I told the truth, you'd hate me, and I thought you liked Amelia, so I wanted to step aside. I didn't know what to do. I was conflicted. She burst into tears, then hugged me tightly, kissing me over and over again. We won't separate anymore, okay? She whispered, asking softly,